technical session 6 of artificial intelligence in legal domain. So I would like to call the first presenter, Ms. Navjot Suri ma'am and Ms. Megha Chaturvedi. Is she present here, ma'am?
No, they are not. You may proceed to the next one.
So our next presenter is Mr. Shashwat Bhardwaj for paper titled as Artificial Intelligence Systems that are being used in legal domain. Mr. Shashwat.
Hello, am I audible and visible?
Yeah.
Sure, I'll present my screen just a second. Very good morning to the respective chairs of this session, my fellow presenters, teachers, and the audience who today have graced us with their presence. I'm pretty sure that all of you would be aware of the popular phrase, with great powers comes great responsibilities. Artificial intelligence is one such great powers which since 1955 has been coexisting with the human race. And today, I, Shashwat Bhardwaj, take immense pleasure in being here and providing you with an insight how various artificial intelligence based programs and softwares, which range from our smartphones to the large equipments that have been working and ensuring the survival of human race in the outer space, are working. And I would also like to tell you about the legal startups that are working in the legal domain to uplift its standards at the global level, and how the relationship between law and artificial intelligence could roll out. Well, it was in it was on August 31st, 1955, when the father of artificial intelligence, Mr. sorry for that. Well, it was on August 31, 1955, when the father of artificial intelligence, Mr. John McCarthy, coined the term artificial intelligence. And in the same year, Mr. Alan Newell and Herbert Simon designed the world's first artificial intelligence program called the Logic Theories, whose basic function was to solve complex mathematical problems. At that time, there were in total 52 mathematical problems that were presented before this software. And out of these 52, it performed 38 very well and also provided certain different methods that could be taken up to solve these mathematical problems. I believe that artificial intelligence and law are such domains which have certain few similarities, as both of them are ever changing, and this cannot be defined in a set of words only. Also, artificial intelligence and law both are very important for the survival of human race, where on one hand, law ensures the survival of human race in the socio-political world by defining the ways how we should live, whereas the artificial intelligence lays the foundation for the coming generation and is also playing an important and vital role in the survival of the digital world, which and these both of these worlds are very essential for the survival of human race in this generation. Well, for the last 1.5 decades, artificial intelligence has been used in various domains of the Indian economy. One of such is the medical sector of India, where recently, a few years ago, Niti Aayog, in association with Microsoft and Forus Health, designed Trinetra, an equipment capable of dealing with childhood blindness as compared to the competition of its at various other levels. Recently, artificial intelligence based softwares were used not only by the Indian medical sector but by the entire world to run the possible stimulations to test the efficiency of COVID-19 vaccines before beginning the human trials at the global level. Well, it's not only the medical sector that has been benefiting by the use of artificial intelligence. The e-commerce sector, education sector, defense sector are among the various sectors that have been benefiting from this. Well, now let us get on to the legal sector. Well, most of you would be believing that also this sector of Indian economy as well would be booming with artificial intelligence. But I would hate to break the bubble to you. It's not entirely true. The harsh truth is that we have still not tapped into the full potential of artificial intelligence. And all we are using is just a tiny piece of the humongous mountain of artificial intelligence present before our eyes. Earlier, all we used to do in the name of artificial intelligence in legal domain was to file an e-case, check the status of an ongoing case, refer to a prior judgment for our research purposes. But now, with the coming age, there are various websites like Manupatra or the SEC Online, which, with the help of their game-changing artificial intelligence-based softwares and programs, are working in making the research process much easier. Whereas there are also various startups that are working constantly and very hard to uplift the status of the Indian legal domain at an international level. So now let us get on to know what these various artificial intelligence based legal startups have to offer to the Indian legal domain. The first of such startups is CaseMind. This NCR-based startup was founded by Mr. Anirudh Yadav and has the backing of its parent company Gauge Analytics, and CaseMind is working constantly to allow its users to access to legal documents for research and analysis purpose without the need to type into various keywords by the means of its next generation artificial intelligence platform. Conceive. This is one of my favorite startup companies that are working in this domain. This Mumbai-based startups was founded by Mr. Gaurav Srivastav and Mr. Prahlad Raut, and with the help of its artificial intelligence platform, Mitra, which is a next-gen platform, if you believe me, is constantly being used by big law firms such as Argus and K-Law in order to help them improve their efficiency in the fields of legal analysis and research, among other things. This startup, which was named after the famous character of Harry Potter universe, Professor Dumbledore's memory viewer Conceive, is also working in association with IIT Madras and has also made it into the Accelerator program, which is currently one of India's largest accelerator program, as it helps the early stage entrepreneurs to improve their odds of success at early stages so they could reach great heights in the competitive world. Now, let us get on to the fact what artificial intelligence has to offer to the various judicial bodies and how beneficial it would be. Well, the first of these judicial bodies is law firms. I believe that with the help of artificial intelligence, law firms would be able to grab this opportunity to reach out to a large number of audience who could be their potential clients. They could host a webinar on a certain legal topic with the help of AI-based platforms such as Zoom or Google Meet, which might not cost them much and can also make these people aware of the kind of legal knowledge they have. And these law firms could also persuade them in believing that they have the right capabilities that can help you if you ever face any legal issue. And the information regarding these webinars could be shared by the means of social media platforms who are also being governed by AI-based softwares. This would cost them peanuts to what they use to invest in the form of advertisement by making large billboards or printing advertisements in various leading newspapers. Second would be the lawyers. Single lawyers who do not have much time to invest due to their busy schedule to go through the large number of cases they have taken up in order can seek the help of various artificial intelligence based programs that would help them extract the details, the precise details they need to be aware of in order to defend the client in the court of law. It could also save them a lot of NRs and reduce their burden. If you believe me, I'm not much fan of this perspective because I believe that a lawyer who goes through these case details can find minute to minute details, which could be proven efficient at any point in time of that case being heard before court. I believe that an artificial intelligence program can exclude certain minor details, which could be proven to be very efficient at a later point in time for that case. Thirdly, would be courts. As we know, as per the reports that were published in various newspapers until February 1st, 2021, we know that there are more than 3.65 crores cases pending before our Indian courts. And with the help of artificial intelligence based programs, these number of cases can be reduced as these programs can exclude the cases which don't benefit the society and are just a waste of time of the courts. Well, until now, all we have seen is the silver lining of what AI has to offer to the legal domain. But I believe that with RISE, there are always pebbles that could hurt our mouth. According to one of the smartest and richest person in the world, Elon Musk, who himself is working towards making an advanced artificial intelligence, said that by 2025, AI would be vastly smarter and might also overtake humanity, which I believe is true up to some extent. And if it might not happen by 2025, it will definitely happen at a time in future. So we are in a dire need of new laws which could govern the applications and functioning of these AIs and can put certain restrictions on those who design it. Otherwise, such a time would come where artificial intelligence enslaves humanity, like we have seen in many science fiction movies. Well, not going there, we should focus on what kind of laws do we need. I think that we cannot govern the coming future of the late 21st century on the basis of the laws that were laid down in the 20th century beliefs in order to govern the conduct of human nature, because we neither want our privacy details to be in the hands of an artificial intelligence, nor we want androids like Sophia of Saudi Arabia and the early stage android Shalu of Mumbai roaming around us without being bound by any specific set of rules. Otherwise, it would be like walking alongside a criminal, a machine gun in hand, who can assassinate whomever he wants at any point in time. We all are aware of the fact that the change in nature is inevitable. We can't stop it. All we can do is learn to live with it, to collaborate with the changing times. And I believe that this collaboration of human and artificial intelligence is possible only when there are laws, set of specific laws that would govern this interface. By concluding, I would like to say that after conducting this research and going through the various perspectives of what could be the future of this interface of law and artificial intelligence, I believe that this future could roll out in two ways. First would be such a time where artificial intelligence will not replace lawyers and judges, which I believe is true, because the AI of today's generation is not smart enough that it can mimic and learn the sense of judgment a judge possesses while giving justice in the court of law. Neither it can mimic the skill set a lawyer possesses, which helps him understand the dignity and depth of a case and his ability to defend his client in the court of law to make sure the justice is delivered. Another perspective could be of a time where artificial intelligence and humans coexist in peace and harmony, where they both work in simultaneously by and are governed by a set of new laws, which defines the parameters that are necessary and important for the survival of both human and artificial intelligence. But I believe that none should underestimate what all opportunities and mysteries the future holds and how the dash will play out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shashwat Bhardwaj. I would like to request chairs if they have any questions, they may ask. Okay, we may proceed. So our next presenter is Mr. Shubh Vashisht on a paper titled as Impact of Artificial Intelligence and Law.
I would also request Gunjan sir to please make Gayatri ma'am the co-host.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so moving to our next presenter, Ms. Mukta Verma on Artificial Intelligence and Law Issues and Challenges. Okay, so further moving to next presenter, Mr. Rochit Abhishek and co-authored by Rishabh Mathur, paper titled as Artificial Intelligence in Legal Profession, an Intelligent Way Ahead. Is he present here?
Sorry to say, Akansha, he is also not present, Mr. Rochit and Mr. Rishabh. So
Okay,
you
sir.
can proceed further.
Okay, so our next presenter is Selaja Petikam on paper titled as Artificial Intelligence in Indian Legal Profession. Is he present, sir?
No, she is also not present over here.
Okay, moving forward, Miss Upasna Singh, ma'am, and Miss Garvita Garg on paper titled as Artificial Intelligence for Justice. Is it possible to replace judicial discretion with computer-based algorithms?
Good morning, sir. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Gavita.
Sir, is my screen visible?
Yes, Gavita, can you make it on full screen on the projector mode?
Yes, sir. Now it's visible, sir.
Yes, Gavita.
Good morning, everyone present here. I would be presenting on the topic Artificial Intelligence for Justice. Is it possible to replace judicial discretion with computer-based algorithms? I will be presenting on behalf of my co-author as well, Miss Upasna Singh ma'am. So the purpose of this presentation is AI in its current shape and status cannot substitute the human discretion in judicial decision making, but AI can assist the human judges in justice delivery system. So I'll be covering what is AI, types of AI, 5 principles, role of AI in judicial making, AI assistance system available globally, and then I would be concluding. So there have been a many vague definition of AI, but we found one appropriate definition for our project, which is given by the Council of Europe Commissioner for Human Resource. An AI system is a machine-based system that makes recommendations, predictions, or decisions for a given set of objectives. And this can be achieved by 3 means. First, utilizing machine or human-based input to perceive real or virtual environments, then abstracting out such perceptions into models, either manually or automatically, and then deriving out the outcomes from these models. So now I'll be defining what are types of AI. So their artificial intelligence can be classified into 2: functionality and strength, which are classified into relative machine. Relative machine is the oldest form. It does not store any pre-saved data. The example which I would like to quote is the chess game, which is called the Deep Blue. Limited memory, it is a reactive machine with capability to learn from pre-stored data. For this, I would like to quote Apple's chatbot Siri. Self-awareness, there is a work in progress in this also. A computer has all the attributes of the human. And lastly, theory of mind. Theory of mind is also still in work of progress. That is understanding the human emotions of empathy, kindness, and many more. Then the artificial intelligence is also classified on the basis of strength. There can be a strong AI or a weak AI. Weak artificial intelligence is a narrow type where each and every scenario is pre-saved in the machine and it's not intelligent itself. For example, a poker game. And strong AI is that which think and work like a human. Our most of the point is based on these 5 principles. The first is principle of respect for fundamental rights. Every research which is made by us have been put through that we should respect our fundamental rights. That is right to access the court, right to hear free and public hearing, right to appear before an independent and impartial authority, right to timely resolution of disputes. Principle of non-discrimination. AI should not discriminate the individuals on the basis of sex, gender, race, color. For this, I would like to quote an example of Compass. That is a US-based AI which discriminated between the Americans and the Afro-Americans. Principle of quality and security. It should ensure the right to security of privacy. Principle of transparency, impartiality, and intellectual integrity. principle of under user control, that is ensuring autonomy of the users. So role of AI in judicial making should be supportive rather than adjudicatory. Supportive in the sense it should support the human judges in the decision making and not be educatory, which is replacing the human judges with the e-judges. So supportive function is taking over the educative function passively. AI assistance system available globally. So first we'll talk about India. Judiciary, being the one of the most conservative field, has refused to implement AI in its system. But this conservative mindset took a U-turn after the world was hit by COVID-19. In the wake of pandemic, the world has witnessed courts functioning virtually in many jurisdictions and embracing technology. Justice is more virtual and digitalized now than ever. Supreme Court of India launched its e-committee website in August 2020, which is headed by Justice T.Y. Chandrachud. Then I'll talk about Internet Courts of China. Before the pandemic has hit the world, the China introduced 3 internet courts, namely Hangzhou, which established in August 2017, Beijing Internet Court established in August 2018, and Guangzhou established in September 2018. The purpose of these internet courts are quick dispute resolutions, improve judicial efficiency, save judicial resources. Safety assessment algorithm. This is one of the AI program which has replaced the traditional bail system with the computer-based bail system. So PSA is in use in states like California, New Jersey, Mecklenburg County in the states of North Carolina and some other states of America. So PSA generates a risk scorecard, which would be ranging from a low of 1 to high of 6. And this scorecard is generated on the basis of 9 factors. And these 9 factors I have summarized in 6. Nature of the offense is violent or not. Defendants have other charges running. Prior convictions on the basis of misdemeanor, felony, and violent crimes. Prior failure to appear pre-trial within 2 years and outside 2 years. Prior conviction resulting in imprisonment, and age at the time of arrest. So, as procedure of sentencing has been criticized for being irrational, and just like other areas of decision making, computer technology has been introduced in this area as well. So assistance in sentencing can be classified into 2: expert system and information system, which are further classified as ASIT and sentencing advisor under expert system head, and sentencing information system under the information system head. What is the expert system? The expert system is a knowledge-based approach. The system provides solution to the problems or answer to the question because the system contains a corpus of knowledge, the result of interpretation of raw data. So this system represents formal rationality in sentencing because it contains knowledge and principles and a set of rules for operationalizing these to achieve an appropriate sentence in any given case. So basically it tells the judges that what sentence should be awarded in the matter of facts. Information system on the other hand is a database approach. It is more prescriptive rather than descriptive. It acts like a precedent. It sees that what the past judgment have been passed, and on the basis of that it provides them with a range of penalties. For conclusion, I would like to say, according to us, AI cannot completely replace judicial discretion, but can assist judges, not in the basis of education, but it can be only supportive. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I would like to ask the chairs if they have any questions regarding this.
Akansha, first of all, please welcome, sir, Dr. IP Singh, sir.
Yeah. So since our board.
हाँ, I'm sorry, like, for being late. I put on record my sincere apologies. In fact, I was traveling and arrived slightly late. My train was slightly late, so rushing to my home and then to the university, and got late by half an hour. So sorry for that.
Sir, Ji.
Barbita was presenting a paper which I started listening almost in between, or almost towards the end of the paper, in which she was talking about AI in the education process, and concluding that the judicial discretion probably is something which is irreplaceable, and assistance is something which is always possible. But I would like to remind all colleagues that what is core of judicial decision making process is judicial discretion. You see, this is something we will have to think twice. But nevertheless, AI is going to help us in any way. And technology is something whose progress you cannot stop, basically. It shall come into play in any case. You'll have to just adjust to it. Well, how do we do that? We shall look into the papers. May I just know who's the next presenter? Is it that Akanksha is calling the...
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
Akanksha,
sir.
beta, please proceed and call the next. I'm sorry, I apologize to you as
It's
well
okay,
for
sir.
being late.
Please, sir, it's our pleasure to have you here, sir. We all are the fan of your modesty, simplicity, and we were anxiously waiting for you. And not only for today, for every occasion, we need your blessings, sir. Thank you. Thank you for being here, sir.
Sir, before proceeding, I would like to introduce both the chairs to our presenters. So I extend my warm welcome to Professor Dr. A.P. Singh. He's having 19 years of teaching experience in national universities and GGSIP University as well. Sir received 8 months of scholarship for undergoing the course on LLM from European Academy of Legal Theory, Brussels, Belgium, during the session 2002 to 2003. Sir is life member of 2 professional bodies, Indian Law Institute, New Delhi, and Indian Institute of Public Administration. He has published more than 30 research papers in reputed journals. So, sir, we are very lucky to have you here. Thank you so much for coming. I would also like to introduce our next chair, Professor Dr. Bhavesh Gupta, sir. He's a dedicated academician who has a healthy exposure with a professional experience of over 15 years in this field of academics. He pursued his LLM from Mr. Aligarh Muslim University and MBA from University of Allahabad. He was awarded a PhD in quantum of punishment and sentence in India and appraisal by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, Agra. Presently, sir is serving as professor cum head of academics at Delhi Metropolitan Education, Noida. He has been also awarded as the Best Teacher Award by Director General Honorable Justice Bhavar Singh for valuable contribution in the...
That's fine, Akanksha.
Thank
My
you,
only
sir.
introduction is I am the student of Professor A.P. Singh ji. That's my only introduction. Please proceed.
Okay,
Please,
sir.
please.
Okay, so I would like to call our next presenter, Mr. Anshit Minocha and Ms. Anjali Nain, for presenting their paper titled as World Wide Web and Working of Democracy and Government Codes. How efficient is the internet in the sphere of practical jurisdiction?
I hope I'm audible and the screen is visible.
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay, so good morning and warm greetings to the respected dignitaries and the participants. Today, I, Anshit Minocha, and my co-author are going to present a paper on the topic, the World Wide Web and the Working of Democracy, Government and the E-Codes. How efficient is the internet in the sphere of practical jurisdiction? It is righteously said by Albert Einstein that it has become apparently obvious that our technology has exceeded our humanity. The technology that exists in the 21st century has evolved in an immensely prompt and fleeting manner. It is also pertinent to note that some of the major revolutions and developments are still materializing over the time, and one of such development is the development of AI. It is quite evident that technology revolves around a never-ending pace of progress and blooming. The idea of justice and the process of affixing it is an immensely tedious engagement to conduct. However, since the apex court is also known as the safe guardian of the rights of the subjects of the state, the notion of justice is always adhered, and the rights of the subjects of the states are never neglected in a democracy. However, the moving of courts from offline to online has created a consciousness and a perception of tightness and apprehension amongst the subjects of the state. And as a result, most of the aggrieved parties do not even approach and address the court about their grievances. Now, let us look at this some statistical increment in the use of technology since the onset of coronavirus. The internet consumption has been enhanced by more than 10% since the spread of novel coronavirus. And there have been more than 250 million internet users from the rural India. Now let us look at the paradigm shift of offline to online courts and how the internet is paving the way in it. The process of justice is ought to be unbroken and ceaseless. Therefore, the courts are taking measures each and every day to digitalize every rigorous case that the resentful and indigent parties approach the court with. Recently, the digital courts have attempted digitalizing more than 100 crores of case files. This attempt of the Indian judiciary shows that almost whole of the nation is prepared and attempted to attire the justness and righteousness of digital India. Now, let us look at the existing pendency of cases with the Indian judiciary. There have been more than 3 crore cases. There have been more than 3 crore cases that have been pending by the date of 1st February 2020. The courts have observed a rise of more than 3% in the existing pendency of cases from February to August 2020. Local and district courts have observed a rise of more than 6% during the similar timestamp. However, there are still certain standards and issues that needs to be resolved to make the system of courts efficient and substantial. Now, let us look that the non-conventional way of delivering justice, that is artificial intelligence, would it be as efficient as the conventional way or not? If such a superintendent task of delivering justice and maintaining cases can only be handled by artificial intelligence if there is a pre-planned road and some developments take place in the artificial intelligence era, which should be centered towards the following: to deliver justice in an efficient manner as compared to offline courts. Secondly, ability to understand human tendencies. Thirdly, ability to understand law and its practical aspects. Now, let us look at the advantages of offline courts that set back the need for artificial intelligence. First, one-on-one human interaction to understand the psyche of the wrongdoer, accused, prosecution, plaintiff, and others. Secondly, no technical issues to deal with. Thirdly, the courts are the conventional way of delivering justice. Now, let us look at the next fold, which is e-democracy, internet, and its challenges. This involves the making of decisions of democracy, interacting with the public, and operating the functions of democracy using the internet. Recently, it was observed that the Honorable Prime Minister Sri Modi ji has carried on all the contemporary speeches or announcements through the video conferencing or being live from their stands. However, it can be observed that more than half of the population of India does not even have access to the internet and World Wide Web. This has also been referred to as a digital divide, which is the gap between the haves and the haves not. However, it is pertinent to note that still certain developments are need to be made in domain of AI and as well as internet. And until and unless such a efficient and flawless manner is developed of communication through World Wide Web, there wouldn't be any positives. Now, I would like to invite my co-author to further elaborate on the topic. Anjali? Anjali, you're not audible. You're on mute.
Beta, you will have to unmute yourself. You are still...
Anjali, you'll have to unmute at the bottom left corner. There is an option to unmute yourself. Sir, she's saying that the host is not allowing her to unmute.
Okay.
No,
Can-
I have given her the permission. I'm just checking if there is any issue. in
Yes,
this.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sure, sir. Sure. Not an issue.
Good morning, everyone. The topic from which I'm continuing is, am I audible now?
Yes, Anjali, you
You
are.
are audible, but please proceed.
E-codes. Okay, so e-codes and e-justice 2005 policy. The foundation of e-codes lies in the Chief Justice Conference held in 2004 by Mr. R.C. Lohit to the Institute of Information Technology and Judicial Reform Cell in Supreme Court of India. This laid an agreement between the chief ministers and the different chief justices of high courts and the central government that they would now take an initiative to digitalize the existing judicial system, and they plan to do it in 2 phases for the better implementation. The next slide. And efficiency of justice delivered by e-courts. Courts, the positive side. Justice is one of the major shifts from offline to online during the time of coronavirus, and because this has paved the way for the future of courts. This may increase productivity, enhances transparency and accountability, reduces the red tape corruptions. The judicial shifts can accelerate the speed of the justice delivered if the quality of the justice is maintained, because if justice delayed, it is justice denied. Then a positive side of e-courts can be held that it saves a lot of time and money, since the litigation is time and money consuming process. There are many drawbacks of the system too. First is learned bias. Learned bias, as James Coward said, that when artificial intelligence learns from humans, it is bad. Artificial intelligence is a human developed process and hence can be biased. The next drawback is High Court websites lack. The next drawback is High Court websites lack of statistics and data. The cases delivered by e-courts should be easily accessible, and this had been attained by because of a major courts shows the need of updating their data in contrast to the recent judgments passed by the learned courts. Hence, it is a very problematic situation because the cases needs to be updated regularly. The next drawback is short-sighted policy planning. 4 pillars of justice has not been linked with each other if the Indian judicial system is to be carried through the internet. Establishment and connections of these pillars through technology is the need of the hour and can also bring a positive change to the working of the courts in this country. The major drawback of this is lack of computer teaching. Deficiency of awareness among the lawyers and judges about computing and its techniques is the major drawback. Majority of lawyers use judicial services located in the courts campuses to collect information about cases. Only a few litigants use e-courts portal due to digital divide, lack of awareness. The roadmap ahead. Now, while the research, we found that there needs to be some recommendations if we need to shift to the online courts. And some of them are that the Constitution of India provides us Article 14 and Article 21. Article 14 states the right to equality, and Article 21 imposes a prohibition that life and liberty cannot be deprived of. Hence, while shifting to online courts, we need to take care of these, that everyone has the equal access to the e-courts. Everyone needs to have the equal access and equal approach, because some people, India is a diverse country, hence everyone is not having the same amount of resources to go to e-courts. And as artificial intelligence is also biased, India has people of different colors. Hence, artificial intelligence is not a system which can be relied upon. It is observed whether or such not such not fundamental rights and considered rights are kept in mind by artificial intelligence and e-governments through e-courts while delivering justice. Maintenance of hardware, attainability of technical manpower, upgradation of software process, and increment in the expenditure of courts and are to be taken care of. Training of judges, litigants, clerks, and stenographers is also an important part of shifting to online courts. Data privacy and data breach rules should be crystal clear. E-courts initiative can fundamentally transform the way of delivering justice. Therefore, it is critical to overhaul e-courts policy, manner of its implementation. Thank you. Any questions, sir?
May I ask a small question, beta? Which are the 4 pillars
Yes,
of
sir.
justice that you are, talking about to be linked through this internet process?
Sir, trial, prison, delivering of justice, authentic way of delivering of justice, the session, and then prison. Like these all needs to be connected. That a person who has been punished, that also needs to be updated, and person who is under trial needs to be connected. The person who has filed the court needs to be connected, and all this process needs to be connected so that we can shift to the e-courts, because there needs to be a regular updation in the process. Otherwise, e-courts won't be having that sufficient data. So that is the 4 pillars I'm talking about, which starts from the trial to the prison.
And one question to Anshit, because
Yes,
he
sir.
started
Yes, sir.
talking about you see how the how efficient AI in practical jurisdiction.
Yes, sir.
This
Yes, sir.
expression practical jurisdiction is something which I was just trying to decipher.
Okay, sir. So you want me to elaborate more on this term, practical jurisdiction?
Practical jurisdiction is something that I would like to understand from you.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. So actually, sir, the concept of delivering justice and the process of delivering justice is in itself a very tedious and a very engaging task. And sir, I personally think by my research and by my co-author's research that if such a task of delivering justice is given to artificial intelligence and machines, there are certain developments which needs to be made, because there are even artificial intelligence is developed by humans. So there are certain principles that are laid down in the legal system, such as principles of natural justice and Article 14 of the Indian Constitution, Article 21 of the Indian Constitutions. That these are some basic structures which need to be adhered while delivering justice. So I personally think by my research that if such a tedious task of delivering justice is given to artificial intelligence, then the artificial intelligence won't be able to deliver justice in such a efficient and flawless manner as compared to the courts which exist. So that is why I use the term practical jurisdiction, sir.
Akanksha, can we proceed to the next paper, beta?
Sure, sir. So I would like to call next presenter, Ms. Neha Srivastav and Ms. Ayushi Ranjit for their paper titled as Legal Dimensions of Artificial Intelligence and Nanotechnology. So are they present, Kunjan sir?
No, I'm just not able to find them in the list. Okay, Sneha, she's here. She's here.
Is my screen visible, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Your screen is
Screen is not visible.
visible. Yes, it is not.
Is it now?
No, not yet.
visible?
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
now it is.
It is visible. It is visible.
Shall I start?
Yeah, please proceed, beta. Please proceed.
So we must have heard a saying that nanotechnology and artificial intelligence are an idea that most people don't believe. Do you agree with this statement? So with this, I, Sneha Srivastav, and my co-author Arshi Ranjit of BBLLB third year from Panasthali Vidyapith, Rajasthan, are going to present on the topic legal dimensions of artificial intelligence and nanotechnology. Artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence refers to the stimulation of human intelligence in machines that are programmed to think like humans and mimic their actions. The ideal characteristic of artificial intelligence is its ability to rationalize and take actions that have the best chance of achieving a specific goal. The term may also be applied to any machine that exhibits traits associated with the human mind, such as learning and problem solving. Role of artificial intelligence in legal field. Artificial intelligence is useful for the legal industry in the following ways. First is to evaluate a contract, for conducting legal research, or carrying out the functions of electronic discovery functions. The legal software of artificial intelligence have proved to be useful and time effective. Second, the artificial intelligence legal software also speculates the possible result of the cases that are being arbitrated before the court of law. It provides requisites about data from previous case laws, as well as it also tells about the judgment and paradigm law, which is useful for the lawyers in dealing with the ongoing cases. By submitting the essential document to be incorporated with the legal document within just few minutes. Artificial intelligence tools provide perceptions to the Internet Protocol portfolios, which is basically to find out as well as for the landmark, patent, copyright, etc. to be registered. Artificial intelligence legislations in India. First is the meaning of Section 43, Clause A and Section 66 of Information Technology Act 2000 provides that if a copy prepared for training the artificial intelligence algorithm is found to be a copy, then it stands even as data theft in the legal term. The definition of unfair trade practices under the Section 2, Clause 47 of Consumer Protection Act 2019 covers wrong or false representation and those facts which mislead, against which consumers can file complaint even through online and offline mode. According to Section 2, Clause O of Copyright Act 1957, the person who develops the artificial intelligence applications are held as the owner of that AI application, except in the case when the developer generates an application within the capability of the worker during the course of employment. Both the source code as well as the object code associated with the artificial intelligence applications are protected as the literary works. The Section 3, Clause K of the Patent Act 1970 provides that the programs of computer are not patentable. If in case an artificial intelligence application is involved in an invention with the hardware which gets proved to be significant component along with the software in the invention. Legal profession and artificial intelligence. The steadily increasing growth of artificial intelligence in the legal field has impacted the legal professions, about which the former Chief Justice of India, Deepak Mishra, has addressed by saying that for any new age technology, its future relies on the rules, regulations that it abides by. There is a requirement of strong legal framework for artificial intelligence so that India can have a much better command over artificial intelligence driven softwares. Similarly, Justice S.A. Bobde highlighted by saying that for dealing with the legal cases and documents handling, the Indian judiciary must equip itself in such a way that it becomes capable of managing issues against artificial intelligence. So I'll be starting with the nanotechnology now. So the word nano is derived from Greek word which means dwarf. Nano means miniature, size, or very small. Nanotechnology is the biggest evolution of technological industry after cyberspace and internet in the world. Nanotechnology is the science of imaging, understanding, measuring, manipulating, and controlling of technology at molecular and atomic level. Legal aspect of nanotechnology. There are two legal aspects of nanotechnology in the world. First is Drugs and Cosmetic Act 1940, and second is the Food Safety and Standard Act 2006. The Drug and Cosmetic Act 1940 provides for the formation of Drugs Technical Advisory Board that would act as general advisory body for central and state government to discuss on the technical matters of the administration of the Act. The Act also established the Drugs Consultative Committee to direct Drugs Technical Advisory Board and central and state government for coherence and legal uniformity in national drug delivery system. The Food Safety and Standard Act 2006. Its essential aim is to set a food safety and standard authority for the purpose of setting standard for food items and to regulate production, storage, distribution, and sale of food so as to ensure that the food is safe and available and wholesome. Legal framework in the world. There have been many international organizations who have developed the regulation method to control nanotechnology. For instance, organizations such as World Health Organization and Food and Agricultural Organization are working on nanomaterials in agricultural industry. But there is no broad legislation related to nanotechnology in any country. The United States of America in 2003 passed Nanotechnology Research and Development Act to set up National Nanotechnology Program to provide funds for national nanotechnology. In Australia, the government agencies such as Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, the Food Standard of Australia, the Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority, and the Therapeutic Goods Administration deals with the nanomaterials. In Thailand, the National Nanotechnology Center proposes strategic plan on safety and ethical issues of nanotechnology. Legal framework in India. The several Indian laws that need changes to include nano-related effects are Insecticide Act 1968, Medical Devices Regulation Bill, National Pharmacovigilance Protocol, Drugs and Cosmetic Act 1968, Factories Act 1948, Public Liability Insurance Act, Environment Protection Act, Pollution Control Laws, Biomedical Waste Rules, Municipal Solid Waste Rules 2000. So with this, I would like to conclude that artificial intelligence and nanotechnology applications, being the most versatile tool at the present with greater potential, do entail a number of legal complications. And since India lacks strong legislation for protecting risk associated with its application, the legal issues of artificial intelligence and nanotechnology seem to be endless and unresolved. This can be sorted out with the implementation of stringent laws governing the artificial intelligence and nanotechnology applications and its technologies. The false assumptions made by the legal expert and law officers that artificial intelligence is likely to replace them completely in the future needs to be changed. In case of nanotechnology, people not to have fear of it because scientists are working with every precautions and regulations. Thank you.
The chairs may ask.
Anyone asking any question? Sneha and Ayushi may be answering them. No questions? We can also jot down questions and ask towards the end if it is possible. There are no compulsions as such, but if we articulate questions right at the time when a presentation is made, So it is appropriate and looks very nice, in fact, because the subject is fresh in our memory. Okay, beta Akanksha, we can proceed, huh?
Yes, sir. I would like to call the next presenter, Dr. Mukta Verma, for presenting her paper titled as Artificial Intelligence and Law Issues and Challenges.
Sukanya, please enable editing and then go full screen.
Yes, am I audible now?
Yes,
you are
ma'am,
audible, beta. You can proceed.
Okay, okay.
Okay, Madam Mukta Verma, please proceed.
Okay, okay. Good morning, sir, and good morning.
Very
to
good morning.
one and all. Sir, the topic for my paper presentation is Artificial Intelligence and Law Issues and Challenges. Before going to discuss about the paper, I would like to tell that this paper is very general, and I have discussed about the various issues and the challenges which can come while we are using the artificial intelligence. First of all, there are some points on which I will focus that will be shown in the next slide. Like, I would like to discuss about what is the meaning of which artificial intelligence can be used. Then what are the advantages of the use of artificial intelligence? Then what are the legislative aspect on the artificial intelligence? And what are the international prospect on the artificial intelligence? And then what are the challenges for the what can be the preventive measures for the artificial intelligence? And then at last there will be conclusion. So now if I focus on the artificial intelligence, basically if you see this we all know that intelligence is a very important thing. It represents to the cognitive mind of any people. We know the human mind has lots of capacities, like it can reason, it has a reasoning power, it has a storage power, so that the data, or you can say the images, can be stored in the subconscious mind of a human being, and then according to the stored data or the stored images, that information can be used by the human being. So we all know that after the revolution of this computer science and the use of information and communication technology, computers, machines, and the machine learnings has developed a lot. And then machine learnings and the, now we can see this machines has developed a reasoning power, analysis power, and these machine learning and reasoning power have changed our living standard, and it has changed our life. Suppose if we see the smartphone, if we see the Alexa, if we go for online shopping, we can see lots of things are using during the online shopping, and lots of things of application of artificial intelligence are using in the different sectors of the different dimension. Like if we see artificial intelligence can be used in the hospitals, it can be used in the police department, it can be used in the identification of criminals, it can be used in the judiciary, it can be used to assist the research, it can be used for the teaching purposes, it can be used for the teaching and learning processes, and so many things are there which can be done with the help of artificial intelligence. We all know that if we go to the any things, everything have a positive as well as negative aspect. So if we see about the positive aspect of artificial intelligence, we all know that no particular legislature have been enacted till now. So we all know that now it is in a very initial stage, it has not developed till now, it is in infant stage, it is it is in a developing stage. So we cannot we cannot know that how much regulations can be how much regulations can be good for the regulation of this artificial intelligence. So this will be about the legislative aspect, because if we but this artificial intelligence can be correlated with the IT Act. We all know that IT Act is was enacted in 2000, and now no particular legislation have been enacted till now for the regulation of artificial intelligence. So my submission here is this: this artificial intelligence cannot be protected, because if it has not developed, so how we can say that it should be regulated? After this point, now we should focus about the international perspective. We all know that so many countries are using artificial intelligence. We all know about this Sophia, that is a robot, has gotten citizenship of Saudi Arabia. So these things has been happening around the world, but the important thing is that need of regulation of artificial intelligence. We know we cannot predict that how much it will harm to the human being, how it will how it can harm to the entire human race. There are again so many challenges, so many issues are there. For example, if we see we can see the use of artificial intelligence for driving a car. So if a car has been driven by a robot, so there can be an issue. Suppose if the car has hit to any person, then who will be responsible? Either that person who have made the robot, or that person who is in a position of that car. Again, if we see the another example, for example, if we go to the intellectual property rights, if any person have developed a copyright, has done any work which come under the arena of patent or arena under the copyright. So again, there can be challenges. So who can be the owner of the copyright? Who can be the owner of the patent? Because we all know machine has not been defined in the IPR. So there can be challenges. Again, there can be so many examples. For example, if any tortious act has been committed by any person, so we all know that machine is doing any act. So who can be punished? That machine or that master? Or again, there can be some challenges. For example, main thing here will be data protection, because we all know sometimes we have seen various movies. We have seen so many movies in which robot has got so much power. So if robot has got so much power, they can use their power into positive aspect as well as to the negative aspect. So if their information or if their software has been hacked by any criminal mind, then that robot can do a very much destructive work to the world. So this is a very important challenge here, that who will control it and who can manage to that kind of situations that can be done in the future. So many challenges are there. Again, if we know that again if we go to the this IT law, and if we discuss about the protection of data, again there will be a challenges of the data protection. And again, so many examples there. If we see about the Alexa, and so many things are there, like facial recognition. And if we are using the artificial intelligence for the identification of the criminals, sometimes software identify the criminals on the basis of their traits, on the basis of their characteristics. So for example, if the information has been stored in the software of any computer or the robot, like for example, criminals have such kind of features, like their color, their features. And sometimes the people who possess such kind of characteristics, but their nature is not come under the criminals, so there can be so many problems that can be faced by the people. So these are the certain challenges and certain issues while we are going to use the artificial intelligence. Now again, there can be some preventive measures. Preventive measures can be there. As we all know, no particular law has been enacted till now. So the law should be implemented in such a way, it should regulate as well as it should give a way so that it can develop into a positive aspect. So it should give a nourishment for the development of the artificial intelligence with the regulations. Again, we all know that there should be some amendment in the IPC, CRPC, and Indian Contract Act, Indian Evidence Act, so that this substantive law as well as procedure law should tackle the and any kind of crimes which can cause through the artificial intelligence. Next important thing is there should be some amendment in the Information Technology Act, so that if any cyber crime has been done with the help of this artificial intelligence, so some provision should be there. Again, in concluding way, I can say that artificial intelligence is very good because it gives it works with efficiency, and it can work throughout the time, and it can do a tremendous work. Human error will be less, but there are certain issues like this. If the artificial intelligence has been hacked by any criminals, then what can be the tragedy, what can be the we can say problem, who will control and how law will control this kind of situations? That should be focused, and we people should know that what are the positive and the negative aspect of this artificial intelligence, and if any crime have been done with the help of artificial intelligence, then how we can get a remedy and what can be the manner. This thing should be focused while we all are using the artificial intelligence with the help of any information technology devices, or with the help of any services. So that is all about the my submission. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I would like to ask our chairs if they have any questions regarding this.
From my side, not questions as such. If audience is interested in raising questions, any articulations or even observations for that purpose. Can we proceed, beta?
Yes, sir. So
we have how many presenters we have, and what is the time frame, beta?
Sir, she was last.
Acha, Madam Mukta Verma was last speaker.
Yes, sir.
Okay, can we then have, you see, question answer session from the audience? Any questions directed to anyone for that purpose?
Sure, sir.
So I listened to 4 papers: Garvita, Anshit, and his colleague. Then another by Sneha and Ayushi, and the other one by Madam Mukta Verma. Is it that we had only 4 papers, beta?
Sir, since you came late.
I joined later.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So we had more papers?
Yes, sir. 2 more papers were already
2 more
present.
papers we had. Okay. So we have no questions from the audience. We are like some 55 people.
Question, sir.
Please proceed.
Sir, I just wanted to ask, what is your perception that how AI can help in the education sector in a long way?
Well, this is an sort of an opinion that you are asking, Kush.
Yes, sir.
But I mean, my understanding is that AI in any case is going to be there, and it is going to be there all over. You see, the point is that it's not simply that technology is increasing, but technological interventions are increasing. Their speed is also increasing. Yesterday it was 10% increase, today it is 20%, tomorrow it is going to be 40%. It's going to be a cascading effect. Technology is going to be there all over in our life process. There's no confusion about it. The only point to my understanding is how do we adapt ourselves? For example, this online class system. Now, everybody may be having, you see, maybe gung-ho about, you see, that, well, we have, you see, alternative ways of holding classes and all that. But as an academician, as a teacher who has been there holding classes and you see, observing and even in monitoring, you see, close to 20 of my colleagues holding classes and you see, using all kinds of things. I mean, its impact has not been, or I would say its outcome is not really very bright. It can be used as an alternative method. There is no replacement of classroom situation. So therefore, as far as legal process is concerned, AI is going to help us in a big way. There is no confusion about it. It is going to speed up the process. We do a lot of, you see, a lot of planning process, writing your written statements and writing your planes and all that. It might help us in really analyzing things quickly. It might help us in preparing things quickly. But ultimately, the justice process will move on the human intelligence. You see, the discretion, as Garvita was talking about AI in adjudication process, and she concluded perfectly that it can be a help, an assistance, not exactly to replace the discretion of the judges. Discretion is the core element of whole judicial process. So it is not going to replace human intelligence and human discretion and in adjudication process, judicial discretion as such, but certainly you see going to be there all over and will speed up the process. That is my understanding. In fact, there are already some, I'm just forgetting the name of that model experiment that is already happening in India, where you see you feed the necessary information, and the robot will come up, the AI would come up with a certain decision making process. Now that might give a certain direction to the kind of argument articulation that an advocate may be making, the kind of articulation on which the judgment shall be based by a judge. It might help that thing. But I would really reiterate it, and that's my understanding, to be very frank, that technology cannot replace human intelligence. Technology cannot replace judicial officers. Technology cannot replace lawyers, teachers that way. Yeah, it is going to certainly speed up the process. So earlier, like if we wanted to do a bit of research, it would take a lot of time looking into those AIRs and you see SCCs and all those things, even SCRs. Nowadays, you quickly go to the, say SCC, for example, and I mean, suppose Keshwant Bharati, you are looking at as to what is the legal status of Keshwant Bharati, as I understand it, and I have seen it happening. You can find, you see, a number of cases in which it has been quoted and has been modified. So in one click of a button, you can find the legal status on that subject. Earlier, it would have taken a hell lot of time of an advocate or an academician to figure out what is the status of particular law on the subject.
Even overruled cases.
Yeah, it gives a list of overruled cases, the cases in which it has been referred to. So it gives us a whole list immediately, which helps an academician and a lawyer to come up with his own conclusions rather quickly. So it has speed, you see, increased the speed with which we do our work, but it has not replaced human intelligence that way. I don't think human intelligence is replaceable. Can we have observations from other colleagues as well? Observations or any other articulation on the subject? I mean, this is going to be, I don't know, even your experiences would do, because this is something about which there is not much of a literature existing on the subject at the moment. It is all like the kids are doing tremendous research and bringing up issues These are just articulations. I had a bit of confusion when Anshit was reading and using expressions like e-democracy or even that practical jurisdiction. He tried to help it, but he tried to explain it, but I was not slightly convinced. For example, e-democracy for that purpose. Democracy is not really something that can be online or offline. Democracy is a process of, you see, interacting with the power wielders, you see, of those who vote them to power. So it's a process of bringing in people into decision-making process. Yeah, e-governance could have been an expression that we understand slightly more clearly, that use of technology or use of cyber technology particularly in governance process, that does make sense. So these are some of the points that I just wanted to make. To my understanding, the 4 papers that I heard, 3 papers basically I heard, 4th was part that I heard. All the 3 papers, including the 4th one, to me appear to be a very standard paper and very nice presentation. Thanks for all the presenters. I'm still looking for other observations, articulations, responses, questions, anything.
So I would like to invite Bhavesh sir also to throw some light on these topics. Yeah.
Ji, Akansha, I'm listening to the kind words of the Professor A.P. Singh, and I must tell that all these the deliberations which have been put by Professor A.P. Singh ji have been really enriching the knowledge of all the participants and the faculty members as well. And we should be deeply thankful to the Professor A.P. Singh ji. Thank you so much, sir. Ji.
Is it that the session is going to be over at 11:30, sir?
Sir, we can extend it if the participants are there. Ji. Akansha, how many participants are there?
So no more participants.
I mean, those presenters are not there. Participants so obviously are there. 51 participants are there right now.
Sir,
so participants.
Sir, you talked about e-democracy.
Yeah, please proceed.
Sir, there can be e-democracy also. We can have electronic voting system. E-governance is understandable, but there can be e-democracy also. We go to the booths to cast our votes. There can be a system where can we cast our votes by sitting at our homes also, by some AI mechanism. So there can be e-democracy as well as e-governance also. There can be a process, an electronic process of electing our leaders, as well as there could be an electronic process of governing by those leaders. This can be a possibility. This can be a possibility. Democracy can be a possibility also.
So do you mean that election is the only thing in a democratic process? Or do you compare election? I mean, do you use election as a synonymous of democracy?
But
the answer is no.
I agree with that, but that's a major part.
This is just a method of gathering opinions of the people. What we say democracy, if you look at, democracy is an expression, if you etymologically explain it, it means consists of 2 words, demos and kratia, which means the system of the people, the paraphernalia of, you see, those tidbits of administrative processes, all those things, whereby the system seeks to bring in as many opinions as possible on board in the process of making a decision about public affairs. That's how we look at democracy. So democracy is, well, right now, so I don't have much, but you may have a point, but somehow I didn't agree on the subject. Doesn't matter.
No, but gathering public opinion is the basic thing for a democracy. We are not just gathering opinion, we are gathering opinion so that a democracy can work.
That's a basic thing actually. Also, that's a future perspective. We may have that in the future.
I'll reserve my comments on the point right now. Doesn't matter.
Okay, sir.
It's very nice. So Bhavesh sir, if there are no more presenters and no more questions, no more articulations, can we just
Excuse me, sir.
conclude the session? Yes, please.
Yeah, good morning, sir. Sir, Shashwat this side.
Please.
Sir, I present. Yes, sir. Sir, I presented my paper in your absence.
Yeah.
Sir, I have a question for you. Sir, like you said that there could be e-governance. So, sir, do you mean that artificial intelligence can govern an entire community?
You see, governance involves variety of processes. So I was speaking even when I was talking about e-democracy, and when I talked about e-governance, I was talking on the basis of general usage. E-governance is a usage that has been made for a very long time. Use of technology in governance process. So we call it just e-governance. But I have not, for whatever reasons, I have not heard e-democracy. So I thought that e-democracy, and then I tried to figure out why e-democracy is slightly an impractical expression. That's how I try to understand. But e-governance is an expression that has been used for quite some time. You will appreciate it. There are a lot of...
May I please speak a word? Can you all hear me?
Please proceed, ma'am.
Yeah, sir, just I absolutely agree with you that there is no, there is no alternative to justice in the form of artificial intelligence. Besides, yesterday a student presented a great paper. He said that his mom is a doctor, and he said so many surgeries in hospitals are being performed by robots. So I think I absolutely agree with you that. And and then this student had a very wonderful view that he said that because his mom is a doctor, he said yet there are so many discretions to be made before performing an operation. So he also said that AI can be used in a very only in preliminary circumstances, not in the final situations of discretion. So very right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Rupa. Sir, please,
Bhavesh ji, I believe if there is nothing on agenda, we can then conclude the session and move on to something different.
Sir, please. Yes, sir. Yes, Akansha, please proceed.
Sure, sir. So I, on behalf of National Law Conference team of DME and entire fraternity of college, extend a very warm vote of thanks to our both the chairs, Dr. AP Singh and our Professor Dr. Bhavesh Gupta sir. So I would also like to thank all the faculty members, coordinators to make this session happen. And I also thank all the presenters for gracing your crucial work and sharing your views with us and your opinion. Thank you.
Sir, there is one more request as well. As we are meeting virtually, we have the souvenir of this conference that will be dispatched at your kind residence, sir, for your perusal very soon. At your residence.
Thank you so much, Bhavesh ji. Though I don't deserve a souvenir because I myself was late.
Sir,
the reasons were beyond my control, though. But nevertheless, your love and affection is always something which you see boosts my morale and you see sort of helps me in doing a bit more hard work. Whereby you see some more thing can be done for the purpose of the academics. Thank you so much for all your good wishes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dost. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gunjan ji, can I log off then? If there is no other.
Surely, sir.
Thank you so much, Gunjan ji, Bhavesh ji, and Akanksha and other participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Gunjan sir, you may end the meeting.
Thank you.